types of music with all of you out there. Hope everybody's doing okay. Uh, First, I want to go over some things that kind of let lag a little bit here. I usually like to give comments on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all the inductees and the nominees and those who get snubbed and all that good stuff. Well, I've been a few months behind everybody, but I'm going to give you my opinions on who's been elected for this year for 2022. Also, want to talk about the snobs, the people who are still sitting on my list of great artists who are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and surely deserve to be there. And then I like to talk about the people that are going to be the future. We have to face the reality. I say this on every video. The rock and roll fans out there are pissed off more often than not about, first of all, acts that deserve to be in that are not getting in there, are sitting there year after year waiting, and the members of the bands sadly are passing away and they're not getting the honor. I get that, but we have to look at what's popular. First of all, music scene has changed. I hate to say it, but the pop music scene of today does not have much to do with rock anymore. It's really the way it is. I know it sucks. And some of you are probably turning me off right now because they don't agree with me, but you got to understand another thing. It's a business. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a business. Think about all the other attempts there have been to do Hall of Fames. The Dance Music Hall of Fame didn't last very long. And the Pop Music Hall of Fame, there really isn't one, you know? There's a lot of artists that will never get honored because they're not considered anywhere near rock and roll. The soft acts will never get an honor because they don't rock hard enough. And there's no other established organization that's going to honor them. That's the problem. So what you get is you're going to get basically a pop music hall of fame. And that's the way it's been the last many years, and it's going to continue to go in that direction because the artists that are popular now, when they get to 25 years and they're eligible, who else are you going to elect? You're going to go with who's on top of the charts, not necessarily who's playing a good guitar lick, you know? It's just the way it is. We have to accept that and we have to move on. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. And only go over who's been elected for this year, 2022. All right, first of all, we have Pat Benatar. First, I got to say it's about damn time. She has been eligible since 2004 and finally gets in now 18 years later. She was one of the top female rock stars of the 80s. As you know, her videos were getting a huge amount of play on MTV. She was tremendously popular and had hits all the way through the 80s. I kind of think a decade of hits is enough, especially if the lasting, classics that she has left us, Heartbreaker and Hit Me With Your Best Shot and Shadows of the Night and, Love Is a Battlefield and We Belong. Great tunes, all great tunes. So she certainly deserves a spot. It's, one of those things that she's been waiting a long time, and people get impatient for their favorites to get in. Well, she's finally in. So it's good to see. All right, next we have Duran Duran, another act that's probably waited longer than they should have waited. Obviously, another huge British band from the 80s with, a huge following and many successful hit songs. MTV sure played their videos a hell of a lot. And they actually, had a decade of hits, decade plus. They kind of started fading at the end of the 80s, but they came back strong in 1993. And they've had a good number of hits. They are rated among the top 100 recording acts of Hot 100 history. They've had their share of hits, and the chicks seem to dig them quite a bit. That's for sure. So they deserve to finally get in. They had been eligible since 2006, so it's about time for them as well. All right, let's keep going. Next, we have the obvious choice, the person that's dominated the rap scene for the last 25 years. I have to give him his due. It's not my all-time favorite kind of music, but I do pay attention. I'm one of those that likes to hear what's on the radio, to hear what's hot, and I've always been that way. Eminem deserves his respect because he sure had a lot of hits, and he has taken rap in terms of record sales to a new level, starting from the beginning. So he deserves this honor. And some people will say, "Oh, first year eligible." Meanwhile, there's people waiting 30 years. But that's how it goes. Eminem has outsold just about everyone. Looking at my list of top artists on Hot 100 history that I'm looking at, I'll definitely do some videos about these lists. He's ranked in the top 25 of all the artists in the Hot 100 era going back to 1958. So you can't ignore his success. So he definitely was not a surprise that he got elected this year. All right, next we have the Eurythmics, which is an exciting, development to see another 80s act get in besides Pat Benatar and Duran Duran. It's a good year for 80s. And the Eurythmics were a very good band. They were very innovative. Sweet Dreams Are Made of This came along at a time that they needed something, an interjection of new wave in terms of the dance scene. I mean, new wave was there. Blondie established it along with the Police and many other acts in the beginning of the 80s. But then you needed this next group of artists to come in and fill that time frame of the mid to late 80s, and the Eurythmics did a very good job of that, I would say. So I'm happy to see them get in. Frankly, I was a tiny bit surprised because I think there may be a few other acts may have been a little more deserving at this point in time to get in, but they belong. Give them the credit. Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart were a great duo together, and they had some great success for a few years. All right, so next inductee is a big surprise, but really shouldn't be, considering the pop direction that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been going. I mean, it's time maybe for a couple of crossover acts that maybe were known for other genres, but were such big stars that we all know their name, and a lot of their pop records were very successful. Dolly Parton is one of those people who have been able to cross over big time into the pop scene and are deserving of the accolades they receive, in my opinion. I mean, she wrote some tremendous songs that not all of which that she recorded, other artists recorded. Most notably, of course, I Will Always Love You, which Whitney Houston turned into one of the biggest hits of all time back in the 90s. And Dolly Parton's had her run of success. Everyone knows her name, that's for sure. You can't forget songs like 9 to 5 and Islands in the Stream that she recorded with Kenny Rogers. She, she's not rock and roll, but she's had an impact that's crossed a lot of boundaries. So in this situation, I kind of feel someone like her deserves it. There's going to be a few others probably that have had similar success and are thought of in a similar way. The Garth Brooks, the Shania Twains, the Kenny Rogers, the artists of that type, the Glenn Campbells. Down the road, they're probably going to get in as well. And I frankly feel that their impact is bigger than just country crossing over to pop. So, the rock and roll is, hey, this is the way it is. It's the way it's going to be. All right, so let's keep going. Next, we have another artist that I feel may have been considered in the past maybe a little too soft. He's had many hits. Everyone knows who Lionel Richie is. And most people know who the Commodores were. Kind of feel, in my opinion, I would have liked to have seen the Commodores get the honor first because the band, because they had many hits, in the 70s. And of course, he was the principal songwriter. But I think when you only honor the solo act, you kind of leave the band in the dust. So I won't be surprised if they don't get in for a long time. But Lionel Richie had his run. In terms of a songwriter, there's not many that rank higher. I mean, he had a run of 9 straight years where he wrote at least one song that got to number 1 on the charts. And that includes We Are the World, which he did with Michael Jackson. And he wrote songs for other artists like Kenny Rogers. He wrote Lady, which is the biggest hit for Kenny Rogers. And just an amazing run. I mean, of course, American Idol probably woke a few people up that weren't paying attention to him for many years. And they're like, oh, Lionel Richie, And that's usually how these things happen. As most of you know, all of a sudden there's a few people that come in and have different ideas of who they feel is deserving. You suddenly see different people getting in, which I think overall is not a terrible thing, because I think you have people like that who are very focused on all styles of music and will come around to, yeah, that was a great rock band, yeah, that was a great soul group, that was a good female singer, and suddenly people who have been ignored for many years are suddenly getting a shot, which I think is a good thing. Anyway, all right. Next, we have Carly Simon, another person who I felt has been overlooked. I mean, in terms of if you take the definition of rock and roll, there's got to be heavy guitars involved in the song for it to be rock and roll worthy. There's some people who have written some beautiful songs and have, had popular tunes that have overwhelming success through more than one genre. And Carly Simon was that, and she fills the singer-songwriter mold, and she helps, fill in the gap of a lot of the 70s acts who really haven't had a fair opportunity to get in. And then I also say it's a matter of a song like You're So Vain is kind of above and beyond the call of just a regular pop or a soft pop song, considering you have Mick Jagger helping out, singing in the background. And she definitely deserves, I think, the opportunity. I mean, I'm sure there was many people who sat in there and said, she's not in already? Nope, she wasn't in yet. And she had been waiting since 1996. So it's one of those that at least you're filling that void of certain eras that have not had many inductees. So I'm happy to see her get in. So anyway, and we go on. Those are all the regular inductees. Now we get to the musical excellence choices. There's two. If you look at it on paper and say, are these artists that deserve some type of accolade, some type of credit for what they've done? Yes, absolutely. I know a lot of people out there that look at it, and it's especially in the Judas Priest situation that it's kind of cheapened that they're only getting in for musical excellence, but at least they're getting in. They're getting an honor. They're going to get out on that stage and be able to thank everyone that voted for them. And maybe they'll perform. I hope they do. I hope Judas Priest will get out there and perform, because they were a very innovative rock band of the early 80s that had definitely an impression on acts that came afterwards. So I'm happy to see them get in. I know musical excellence is not the same. I mean, I was disappointed with LL Cool J was only getting musical excellence, but at least he's getting an accolade. There's so many others, and we'll go over the lists as I do other videos. You're going to see the list of artists still that are deserving that have not had a sniff, and it's, but it's one of those things. They can only elect so many. All right, the other musical excellence award is going to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who were very much innovative in terms of R&B in the 80s. They had an influence on many acts that have come along after. They're another one of those. Janet Jackson would not have had anywhere near the career she had without the two of them helping her, and that's for sure. So I'm kind of happy that they're in. They deserve it. Now you also have, early influence awards I want to go over. Alan Grubman was a very successful lawyer who did a lot of things to help move the concerts forward in the years, and a lot of artists had a great guy to protect them in a lot of cases. He helped people get their royalties, when they felt like they were getting robbed. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. He's definitely had a good impact on the record business for sure. All right, next early influencer, Jimmy Iovine. Was one of the best producers for a long time, and definitely a great record executive. A number of artists that he has worked with is endless. So he definitely deserves the honor. He's someone that's been a big name and has helped develop a lot of great acts through the years. And the last choice is Sylvia Robinson. She's kind of interesting case. She was a performer and became a record executive. She started out, you may not remember, some of you may remember, Mickey and Sylvia back in the 50s had a big hit called Love is Strange. That was featured in, was that featured in Dirty Dancing? I'm not really sure. I'd have to look that up. But she definitely had an impact with that song. And into the 70s became more of an R&B performer. Had a very early, shall we say, an early example of 70s seduction on the radio. Her song Pillow Talk was a big hit in 1973. May have influenced other songs that came after, like Love to Love You Baby and some other things, but definitely an influence. And then at the end of the 70s, she became a record executive, and one of her best, most successful finds, the Sugar Hill Gang. There would be no Rapper's Delight without her, for those of you who may not be aware. So, just for that alone, she deserves some kudos, I would say. So she, this is a good choice as an early influence. All right. So enough of the inductees. Now I want to look at the snubs, because there's still a big list of snubs in front of me. This may have chiseled off a few names off the list, but there's still a whole bunch to come. All right. So the snub list. I mean, I'm going to do a video where I'm going to talk about the top 100 snubs, because there are that many, and there's probably even more that I just didn't think of that deserve to be considered at least. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll go over the top 10 with you, just to tell you how the list has been updated. And every year it changes, because certain artists sometimes get more notice for what they did in the past. Other artists kind of slip out of the public eye. Sadly, some pass away, so they start getting more attention now because they're gone. Which is a shame. That has to be a reason. But let me do a top 10. All right, here's where I stand right now. My number 10 is George Michael. How could you ignore that the man had 9 number 1 hits between his group Wham and his solo career? He was a great artist, very innovative in the 80s, and he got on MTV a whole hell of a lot. So I think he's someone that needs to at least be nominated. It's been a while. He's been eligible since 2008, so I think it's time. It's a shame that he's gone already, that we lost him, so he won't have the honor in his lifetime. But we'll see what happens. Maybe next year will be the year. So we'll keep going. Number 9 is a group that definitely had a big influence in the 90s. Rock, rap, grunge, kind of involved a little bit in all three. Talking about Rage Against the Machine. I think they definitely are that kind of group that you don't hear much nowadays. They're a throwback to the 60s, protest groups, protest songs. A little more out there, probably, in the 90s than it was in the 60s. But they were the one act that at least they were told it like it is. So I kind of think they deserve at least another nomination. I mean, they've been nominated a few times, but I think they deserve to get in. I do, truly. All right, number 8 on my list of the biggest snubs is Dionne Warwick. I still feel, even though she's known for the Hal David, Burt Bacharach softer sound of the 60s, I think she was definitely innovative and had influence on a lot of singers that came after. And she had a pretty big career. Looking at the number of hits she had, she's a household name. And she was also the cousin of Whitney Houston, who's probably one of the greatest singers ever that there ever was. So I think Dionne Warwick is someone that deserves at least another couple more opportunities to get nominated. But we'll see. Number 7 on my list I've been complaining about for years. It's Foreigner. Some people would kind of look at them as, they're corporate rock, corporate pop. Yeah, but you've let Bon Jovi and Journey get in the last several years. I think Foreigner should at least get a nomination, at least get a shot. They had a bunch of hits. They've been eligible since 2002, so that's 20 years now. Come on, guys. At least give them a sniff of a nomination. That would be nice. All right, number 6, another one that may have already gotten in with his group, but the solo career of Phil Collins cannot be ignored. He was definitely a dominant force on the radio throughout the 80s, certainly. And, pretty damn good drummer. Anybody that hears a song in the air tonight can attest to that, for sure. And it's a shame that he's really not, health-wise, not in a condition to really be able to perform anymore, which is pretty sad. But I think he deserves at least a nomination for a solo career. If you're going to give that to Stevie Nicks, I think Phil Collins deserves a shot. All right? Next, number 5. All right, actually, the next 2 are going to be innovative new wave bands from the 80s who definitely are acts that woke my eyes up too. that there's a lot of great music coming over from the UK in the 1980s, certainly. All right, so number 5, I have the Smiths. Smiths may not have had any real hits here in the USA, but a lot of people know their music. They were definitely a good concert draw through the 80s and 90s. The lead singer Morrissey has always seemed to be kind of popular. I think their music is definitely had an effect on a lot of acts after as well. So I think they deserve their shot. Now, number 4, I think, is just deserves a shot. A tiny bit more. Why? Because there were actually 2 different groups and had 2 different groups with huge followings and tremendous classic songs. Of course, I'm talking about the Joy Division and New Order. I mean, they're a story and a half. Poor guy, Ian Curtis. The last thing he wanted to do is become successful, and then that kind of motivated him to end his life, which is sad. Pretty sad. They were just putting out their first song that was starting to catch some attention around the world. And then he offs himself. But the rest of the group, got to give them credit. They didn't give up. The rest of them stayed together and went into this little bit different direction musically, more into electronic dance music, and ended up having some tremendous success, especially on the dance charts in the USA. And of course is Blue Monday, which is still ranked among the biggest selling 12-inch singles of all time. That alone should give them an extra point or 2 towards getting elected at some point. If it'd be nice if they get nominated first, though. All right. Number 3 of the snubs is Willie Nelson. Yes, I know, country. Again, another country crossover. But you're going to deny that man didn't have an impact on all of music? I mean, he did write some great stuff. I mean, besides the country tunes, there'd be no Patsy Cline without the song Crazy. And he's someone who's just goes above and beyond the realm of just being a country legend. He is a music legend. And I think it's a good idea to start honoring people like that, especially now that the wave of the music scene is kind of getting away from rock. We've got to have some other viable artists that at least have the respect of rock and roll fans. That's the way I look at it. So, but I think Willie Nelson he's never been nominated. He deserves at least a nomination. Okay. Number 2, which is not going to make the rock fans any happier, but look at it this way. If you're going to honor a music, you're going to give rap the credibility that it has as a music genre. You got to honor who's the best, who's really made a splash in that genre of music, okay? So what I'm talking about is the group Outkast. I think Outkast has some very witty, very brilliant lyrics, some smart songs that make you think about the world and certain things, which is music that I appreciate quite a bit. And they've had their moments of huge success, especially 1993 and 4. 2003 and 4. Sorry. With Hey Ya. That was a huge hit. That owned the radio and the video channels of the early 2000s for sure. I think they're innovative rap act, and they deserve at least a nomination. I feel they would get in. They would almost definitely get in the whole thing. So now I'm down to number 1. My number 1 snub, since thankfully my top 3 all got in last year. Well, actually, top 2. All right, I would say Mariah Carey was my 3rd choice for snubs. And she's still a snub. I mean, maybe fall into that she's a diva type thing, but you can't deny the success she had. When the only recording act that's ever had more number 1s on the pop chart is the Beatles, and you're number 2, I mean, you deserve some serious respect and serious consideration. And that's how I look at it. I think with 19 number 1 hits, how could you not put her in? With Whitney Houston and Janet Jackson already elected, I think it's almost a sure thing in the next year or 2. So that's that. All right, now we've gone through the snubs, and I see I'm at 25 minutes, so I kind of want to keep this under 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the artists who have having tremendous success now and in the last several years, who are don't have not reached the 25-year qualification to be considered for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, of course, very few of them would really be considered rock. They're just straight up pop, R&B, rap. That's pretty much the choices. There's one or two that fall more into the soft rock category, I would assume. Um, so I'm going to give you the 10 that are on my list of the not yets, meaning, and I can give you a good idea of when they will be eligible. A lot of them are eligible in the next few years. Let's go over the list. Okay, so number 10 of the not yets is Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars had his first hit record in 2010. So then you go that into 2011, 25 years after that. He'll be eligible in 2036, so there's no rush, fan. But the career he's had so far is definitely, it needs to be respected. One of the biggest hits of all time with Uptown Funk, you know, and several other number one hits. So I think he's actually a very entertaining artist. I actually don't think he's a bad guy. There's other people up and down this list that I'm like, it doesn't seem so wonderful. But Bruno Mars is a great entertainer, as you all know, those that are paying attention to the pop scene. All right, number 9 of the not yet is Ariana Grande. She is another one who's had many hits already. She is not even 10 years into the music business, so it's going to be a while for her too. We won't see her possibly get nominated till 2037. And I know she's not rock. I'm going to hear this. I'm going to get 50 comments on this anyway. It's okay. But, these are the pop acts. The hot acts now are going to be the people that, are going to look back on. Our kids are going to look back on when they're 40 and 50 and say, oh, those were the days. That was fun music or whatever. All right. So anyway, let me go through this. Number 8 is The Weeknd. I think he's been pretty innovative, and he's used a lot of good retro sounds, at least, on a lot of his songs. I hear a lot of 70s and 80s songs and artists in a lot of what he's done. And relatively talented, and he's had a couple of tremendous hits. An example is Blinding Lights, which I will talk about in some videos down the road, is currently ranked the number 1 biggest hit in the history of the Billboard Hot 100, which is a pretty amazing feat. It's a song that spent actually 90 weeks on the Hot 100, which is a record. An artist that can pull that off, at least it's talented. It's not a throwaway music, in my opinion. But he's number 8 on my list of the not yets. Number 7 is Justin Bieber. Now, some are going to laugh, Justin Bieber, and think of him as a little kid from 2010 and 11. He's definitely grown up. And he has no shortage of big hit records. And so he's definitely someone you're going to look at 10 years from now as a future Hall of Famer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, number 6, Katy Perry. Not my favorite artist of all time. I don't really like her that much, to be honest with you. But you can't ignore her success. She's had nine number 1 singles. 9 number 1 singles, which is as much as Stevie Wonder and the Rolling Stones. So that's an honor you can't ignore. She definitely has had a run of success in the last 10 years. And kind of looks like she's might be fading out a little bit in the last year or two. But her success might be enough that, they'll look at her as someone that might be worth a vote 10 years from now. Anyway, all right. Number 5, I think, is almost a sure thing to get in when she's eligible. I won't be shocked if she doesn't get in next year with Destiny's Child. Of course, I'm talking about Beyonce. She's had a big run of hits, and when your husband's Jay-Z, who's already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he is gonna be, hey, take care of my wife. Hey, look at her career, look at what she's done. She should be right here with me. That's coming. We all know that's coming. That's why I believe Destiny's Child will get in next year. But we'll go over that as we get closer to the end of the year. Once the inductees get in November, they'll start talking about next year, and so will we. All right. So, number 4, Maroon 5. People who are not very much familiar with the pop music scene are going to say, oh, that guy with the tattoos that does the voice. Yeah, big deal. can't ignore the numbers. I've been looking at the records they've sold. They're up there with the very top of everyone in the last 20 years. They're a group that had their first hit in 2004, so they've been out there a while. They are eligible in 2028 to get elected, and most likely I won't be shocked if they get in. I won't be shocked at all. Another act that I think is almost a guarantee is Taylor Swift. You gotta give her credit. She's had a million hits. She's had a million hits. Everybody knows who she is. And she is made a lot of money in this business for sure. Do I think she's a sure thing to get in? I would say pretty close. I mean, if you look at what's going to be happening 10 years from now, 2032, when she's eligible, I think the road is going to be easier for a lot of these artists, because hopefully they'll clean up a lot of the artists that we feel have been snubbed and finally get them in. Once all of them are in, all you're going to have is the new acts coming up and getting to their 25 years. Anyway, all right, number 2 on the list is another name that's probably going to annoy people, but the numbers don't lie. I'm talking about Drake. Drake has had more Hot 100 hits than any artist in the history of the Hot 100, except for the Glee cast, but I don't think we should count the Glee cast. They had 300 songs on the Hot 100 during the run of their TV show, because they were putting out 10 new songs every other week. It was ridiculous. So I don't really count them. But yes, next, number 2 on the list is Drake. I mean, he's still only number 12 overall among the top artists of all time. So don't think, oh my God, he's gonna be number 1 ahead of the Beatles and no, he may eventually. You can't ignore him. You can't ignore his success. And I don't think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is going to be able to ignore him if he continues having hits for the next several years. Anyway, number 1, someone who I actually enjoy her music quite a bit. I think she's incredibly talented, and she's had a big run of hits. She's had 14 number 1 hits. Talking about Rihanna. Now, she had her first record in 2006, and she's still a name. She hasn't really recorded much in the last year. She's not on the charts, but she'll be back. I don't think she's gone for good. She's number 1 on the list for a reason. Like I said, has 14 number 1s. She's ranked number 10 on the history of the Hot 100. And she'll be in, probably. I bet you she'll get in on the first try as well. That'll be 2028. So here we are. We're up to date on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I hope it's been at least informative. And even if you don't agree with me, hey, it's fun to talk about. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back. I'm going to be posting pretty often, a lot of stuff. I'm looking to do reaction videos as well, and talking about different years, what artists have achieved in their careers, and the music. Because that's the one thing we can all share. We all love the music, or you wouldn't be watching me right now. All right, so I'm Paul, the pop music freak. Glad to be with you. Look for me. Like it. Please like the video, share it, subscribe. Got to build up my my army of subscribers again. Starting all over. So anyway, thanks for watching. All the best. Peace and love.
Audio Jungle.